All right, welcome to the 2016 Homeless Count Training Guide. My name is Jonathan Hans, and I'm here with another one of my regional coordinators, Paul Lang, and we're going to be going over today your deployment site coordinator and volunteer training. So this is specifically for deployment site coordinators, but we've included the volunteer training as well so that you guys are as informed as possible on everything to do with the homeless count. So that way, when the volunteers go through their training, if they have any questions, you've already been through that information. You can answer those questions for them. So let's get started. Let's see what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about the homeless count. We're going to talk about why we count, why it's important, and then we'll go more specifically into your deployment site coordinator training and then also that volunteer training. All right, are you guys ready? Let's begin. So about the homeless count, we're going to talk about the count, what it is, the goal of the homeless count, and also why we count and why it's important. So let's take a look about the homeless count. The homeless count is a census of everyone experiencing homelessness in the Los Angeles continuum of care. So that covers all of Los Angeles County. You can see in this map here to the right. So let's take a closer look at this map. So we break up the Los Angeles County into 8 different service provider areas, or SPAs that we call them for short. And we cover all of Los Angeles County except for Long Beach, Glendale, and Pasadena. They do their own count. It takes over 6,000 volunteers, such as yourselves, over 3 days and 3 nights to do the count, so it's a big effort. And these are the official numbers used by policymakers, service providers, and even the U.S. Congress, which is pretty neat. So the #1 goal of the homeless count is accuracy. The most accurate results lead to the best solutions. So we want to have the most accurate homeless count that there has ever been. And the numbers from the count are used, they're sent to different policymakers, locally, statewide, and even nationally, and that helps those that are experiencing homelessness, so those individuals that you see on the night of the count. Why count? Why is it important? This information is vital to ending homelessness in so many ways, but we're going to talk about 3 of them. The first one is we begin to identify trends. When we count, we get to see the different demographic breakdown of who we find that is experiencing homelessness in our areas, whether that be veterans or families or youth. And being able to identify those trends helps us come up with solutions to meet those needs. So whether that be we see a rise in veteran homelessness or a rise in youth homelessness or families, those different demographics have different needs. And so we are going to come up with different solutions for them. And we do that by identifying those trends. It also brings funds to those experiencing homelessness. Those numbers, that information is used to get funding for service providers and different people that are experiencing homelessness. And this 3rd point is probably the most important one. These are people, not numbers. When you look at that total number, sometimes that gets lost, but that number is an actual person, a person that's experiencing homelessness. And I think that a lot of us have volunteered and are involved in this work because we care. We want to make our communities better. We want to contribute to our neighborhoods and to our cities. And the homeless count is one of the best ways that we can do that. So let's get you trained on the homeless count for deployment site coordinator training. I'm going to hand it over to my friend Paul here.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate all the time that you're putting in to make this 2016 homeless count a success. We're just going to look at a few different items here for deployment site coordinator training. And just keep in mind that our approach is a mix between training and coaching. So we're going to give you some information today, but also know that your SPA-specific regional coordinator will be available to walk you through any questions that may arise. So we're going to look at a few things here. We're going to meet your team for the night of the count with some pre-count activities. We'll look at deployment site setup, site management, and then a few tips on what to do if the media shows up on the night of the count. Okay, your team. There's the regional coordinator. you, the deployment site coordinator, assistant site coordinators, volunteer trainer, site contact, volunteer count teams, special outreach teams, and tally sheet validators, which is a new role this year. And this is how each member of the team kind of finds himself on the night of the count. So within their deployment site, we have you, the deployment site coordinator, along with your assistants, some volunteers who are doing site management, office management type activities, the trainers, and the tally sheet validators. Then when we look out into the broader neighborhood and city, that's where the counters are, the drivers, the navigators, and special teams. And then finally, as we look at the broader region, we have the regional coordinators who are providing support across their SPA and beyond. What we want you to notice here is that everybody in black font there, those are all volunteers, and it's just the regional coordinators who are the LASA staff in this situation. So really, it takes over 6,000 volunteers for a successful count, and we really rely on folks like you as well as your friends who will be joining us on the days of the count. Let's take a closer look at the different roles of your team. So the regional coordinator, your regional coordinator is available to assist you with any questions throughout the count. They should really be your first point of contact for questions and immediate assistance. You will be provided with a list of additional contact numbers as well. If you're unable to reach your regional coordinator but need immediate assistance, please call the headquarters. And you don't need to memorize these numbers now as we present them on the screen here, because we'll provide you a cheat sheet with all sorts of information that you may need on the night of the count. As a deployment site coordinator, your role is really to be in charge of the deployment site. Just a few tips here. We want to treat people with respect as site coordinators, set clear rules from the beginning, leave your cell phone on, and bring a charger. And also, it's okay not to know an answer. And finally, please dress comfortably. Some of the specific responsibilities are to coordinate and manage the entire site, assign teams to census tracts, deploy teams, communicate with the regional coordinator and with headquarters, and answer questions and inquiries. Your deployment site coordinator assistants will help sign in volunteers and give out the LASA waiver forms, collect waiver forms as teams are deployed, give out T-shirts and materials, help with any tasks assigned by you, manage documents, manage volunteers, and assist the tally sheet validators. The volunteer trainer is responsible for setting up the training area, to give the training, to answer questions, help with any tasks assigned by you, and help validate tally sheets at the end of the evening. Just a quick note is that some trainers will be training at multiple sites, so they may need to leave early. But you will have that conversation with your trainers, and your regional coordinator will help with that process as well. The site contact is the person who is connected to the facility that we are using for deployment site. So they're going to open the doors to make sure the restrooms are open. They'll assist with any facility needs, set up any AV equipment that may be necessary, and then they'll also lock up at the end of the night. The volunteer count teams consist of drivers, navigators, and counters, and we're going to take a deeper dive into those different roles later in the training, so we'll just mention them here briefly. The special outreach teams, these are the trained outreach workers and law enforcement who count areas that are unsafe for volunteers to count. And your tally sheet validator. These folks there ensure the tally sheets are properly marked when they're turned in at the end of the night. They'll enter the tally sheet data into a digital tally sheet form, so it's uploaded immediately to LASA headquarters. They'll put all the tally sheets in the provided envelope and seal them for pickup, and they'll give the tally sheet envelope to you as a coordinator to make sure that they're delivered back to the hub or to headquarters. Okay, so that was your team. And we want to look at a few pre-count activities that we'll need to do to make sure the count is successful in your neighborhood. First and foremost is we want to make sure that we're recruiting and managing volunteers ahead of the count. And a little birdie whispered this pro tip in my ear: the more volunteers, the faster you get done, which means you get more sleep that night. So recruit, recruit, recruit. Secondly, there will be a Nation Builder training. Your regional coordinator will contact you by January 9th to make sure that you are able to log into Nation Builder and that you have the instructions to do some basic activities there. We want to arrange for refreshments ahead of time. Coordinate the supply, delivery, and pickup. And then, very importantly, ahead of the count, we want to make sure that you assign teams by census tract. This makes the evening flow in a smooth manner. And we'll note as well later that you'll need to solidify those teams again based on which volunteers actually show up on the night. Site setup. When you first show up to your deployment site, make sure you come early. You're going to meet your site contact, any security, and the trainer. And for site setup, there's a number of different areas that we need to have in place. First is a sign-in table that should be located near the door. We want to have snacks, which are very important. Food makes people happy. Make sure we have some seating for the volunteers. Make sure there's a materials table. I want to open the bathrooms and help the trainer set up the training area and provide directional signs. So this is really important for the restrooms, but also outside of the room that you're meeting in. If you are located on a larger campus, we want to put up some directional signs that will help folks find their way from the parking lot to the actual deployment site room. And just remember to be flexible. Some sites will have just a variety of different setups. You may actually have to use multiple rooms. So just be flexible and go with the flow and get it set up for a way that's going to help volunteers kind of get in the door, get signed up, get trained, and get deployed well. A few notes on the site setup. One thing you'll need to do before volunteers arrive is you want to call the police or sheriff department to alert them of the count. We'll provide you with a script that you can use as you talk with them. Many of the deployment sites will actually have law enforcement on site, so they'll be aware that the count is going on. If that's not the case for you, be sure to call the local division. Check in with the regional coordinator. Just say, hey, we're here, we're open, things are all set up, we're ready to rock and roll. We want to review the advice guide and organize the tally sheets and make sure you have all the census tract maps. And then you also want to make sure that the clipboards are organized. So each clipboard should have a tally sheet, and you can fill out the deployment site information. I'd recommend doing this prior to the day of the count. They should also have a census tract map or maps, phone numbers, referral cards, and a volunteer cheat sheet. For site management, always try to keep the site organized and orderly. Have volunteers sit when they arrive. You want to deploy teams one at a time. If people have questions, please ask that they raise their hand. And then you also want to respond to any issues that come up quickly. And there's kind of that balance between prioritizing the urgent and also sticking to your schedule. So what do we do if the reporter shows up? The homeless count is a big event. It's engaging thousands of people across the county. And so we do expect some reporters to come to different deployment sites. The first thing you want to do is you want to welcome the reporter. And you ask them to fill out the media request form, which will be provided to you in your packet. And we do this because we want to coordinate their experience. Then you'll call Naomi Goldman, who's the media representative. Her number will be available to you. It's on the screen here as well. And feel free to talk to the reporter about your volunteer experience if you feel comfortable doing so. But also let the reporter know that a media spokesperson can speak on behalf of LASA if they have detailed questions about the homeless count. The media representative, Naomi, will direct your next steps. Okay, on the day of the count. This is how the night typically runs. So I'm going to run through this, and then we'll take a deeper dive into a few of these areas. So you're going to show up and you organize the supplies and materials, to set up the deployment site. The volunteers are going to arrive. We'll train the volunteers, solidify teams, and then we're going to go out and count. The volunteers are going to return with all their tally sheets. The tally sheets are looked over and they're entered into the online system by the tally sheet validators. We clean up the deployment site and then return the supplies and the tally sheets. Okay, let's take a closer look at some of the supplies and materials. This is a basic checklist that just lists out all the supplies that you'll have from LASA and all the documents. So just showing this here briefly to let you know that we're going to have you set up on the night of. You'll have all the materials and all the documentation you need. And if you have any questions that come up around these materials, please contact your regional coordinator. Okay, creating teams. There's two types of teams. And they relate to the type of census tract. So for some census tracts are really large and they require driving to cover them all. So we're going to call those driving teams. The other types of census tracts are more densely populated and can be walked, and those are walking teams. Okay. So for driving, there's a maximum of 4 individuals on the team and a minimum of 2. We don't want any solo counters out there. They consist of a driver who must have a car that can accommodate the entire team, a navigator, and counter or counters. And this is a really important note here. Driving teams doesn't mean that you stay in the car the entire time. You still need to walk areas like parks or shopping centers to thoroughly cover your census tract area. Okay, walking census tracts. So the walking teams that are covering those census tracts have the same requirements in terms of numbers, a maximum of 4 and a minimum of 2. They're going to consist of navigators and counters. And we also want to try to incorporate a mix of men and women per team. This is for a variety of reasons, mainly because of how the teams may be perceived by homeless individuals. It's just better to have a good mix there. But more importantly than the mix of men and women on the team is to have a mix of experienced and inexperienced folks. So we always want to try to create teams with at least one person who is participating in the count before, so there's some experience on that team. We don't want to send folks out who are totally green all in one team. Recognize that you may have to do that in some cases, but the preference is to add some experience. Okay, so there's some activities that you'll want to do before the count to create the teams. You want to identify those experienced team leads, and you should be able to do that in Nation Builder, and your regional coordinator will be able to walk you through how to do that. The teams, again, should consist of 2 to 4 people. Consider the role preferences when assigning teams. Through Nation Builder, you'll be able to see if folks signed up for a particular role preference. It is a preference. It's not guaranteed that they will get that role. So keep that in mind, that you can move them around if needed. I want to assign the census tract or tracts to the teams. And here's a very important note. Volunteers must be 18 years of older to be deployed for the street count. Volunteers who are 14 to 17 years of age may work at the deployment site, so they can help check folks in, but we won't be able to deploy them out into the field to count on the night or the morning of the count. Okay, on the day of, you're going to want to solidify teams. You ask the teams to sit together and then fill in empty seats with extra volunteers. So if you've created a team and there's only 2 folks who showed up for that team and you have extra volunteers, you can then add them to that team. If you have an abundance of volunteers, we want to make sure that we try to put them to work. So you can do that by making teams larger, but again, a maximum of 4. And then we can call LASA headquarters, or actually a regional coordinator would be the first point of contact for possible redeployment to a nearby site. If you don't have enough volunteers, you show up and you go, oh man, a bunch of people flaked out on me. What you can do is make groups smaller, and again, it's a minimum of 2, no solo counters out there. And you can assign teams additional census tracts to cover. Just let them know, though, that the night may be a bit longer than what they had expected. And again, call your regional coordinator to see if there's extra volunteers at a nearby deployment site. Okay, the checkout process. I want to collect all the tally sheets and supplies. It's important. The supplies will be reused for the following night, so we want to make sure that we get all those flashlights and pens and pencils back. I'm going to review the tally sheets with team leaders for accuracy and legibility as the teams return. Ask the volunteers where they found people and where they looked. And we want to flag census tracts and inform the regional coordinator if there's any concerns about accuracy that arise as you check folks back in. And if there is a concern and time permits, you can send another team to the area. Use the checkout form. We want to separate the counted from the not counted census tracts and place them in the designated folders. Also want to pass out the certificates of appreciation to the volunteers. At closing time, you want to call the regional coordinator to report all the teams are in. You want to close and clean up the space. And return the materials to the hub. And just a little quick note there that some spas will actually have folks going around to collect those materials. So check in with your regional coordinator regarding what your action should be in terms of getting the materials back to the hub. Okay, if you have any questions if you have any questions, please contact your regional coordinator. For the spas, their name and contact information is listed there. And keep in mind that we have a training/coaching model here. So we're giving you information today, and you can follow up with your regional coordinator for some additional coaching and questions. I'm going to pass it back to Jonathan Hans now, who's going to give you a sneak peek into what the volunteers will experience for their training on the night or day of the count.
All right, so now we're going to go into our volunteer training. This is the volunteer training that they will receive either prior to the count or the night of as well by one of the trainers. Just so that you know, we are going to go over that first section about the count, why we count, why it's important. We're going to go over that with the volunteers, but just for the sake of time, we're going to skip that section and we'll go straight specifically to the volunteer training, which will come right after that about the count and why we count section. So let's get started on volunteer training. So the schedule of the night, we're going to talk about teams, and then we're going to talk about maps. So the schedule for the night. So times may vary depending on location, but this is kind of a general breakdown of how it'll go for the night. At 8 p.m. we're going to check in, 8:15 we'll start a training, and then at 9 p.m. we're going to team up and we're going to count. And at this point, each team is given a map and supplies to count. Walk and drive your area and thoroughly count every street, alley, and park. So then after you're done, you're going to return to the deployment site. It normally takes 2 to 3 hours depending on the number of volunteers. The more volunteers you get, the less time it'll take. And everyone must return to the deployment site to check in with the coordinator. Okay, this is really important. When you're done counting, don't go to the movies or go get a bite to eat. You want to go back to the deployment site to hand in your tally sheets and let them know that you've returned safely. So that's a general schedule for the night. Teams. Okay, so we'll divide into teams after the training. For now, we're going to just go over what the teams are going to do and their responsibilities and roles. So the first one is for driving census tracts. A driving census tract is for census tracts that are too large to walk or are geographically challenging to walk as well. So we have driving teams for driving census tracts, and this is how they look. You'll have 4 people per team with a minimum of 2. And that consists of 1 driver, 1 navigator, and 2 counters. And each team will have 1 tally sheet. Remember, so this is specifically for driving teams, thoroughly cover all areas in your census tract. You may need to park and walk areas such as parks, so you want to thoroughly count everything inside there. So just because you're driving doesn't mean that you don't have to walk sometimes. Let's take a closer look at some of the roles. All right, the driver. Your primary job is to drive the team safely. You're not looking to the right or the left trying to count. You're not navigating. We want to keep both eyes on the road, all right? So your primary job is to drive the team safely if you're the driver. Navigators. Your job is to help the driver navigate around the assigned map. You want to keep track of areas that have been covered. And you can assist in counting when not navigating, or if you have a smaller team, you can help count as well. But those are the primary jobs of the navigator. Counters. You are going to observe and document the number, gender, and age group of homeless people. You're going to note the number of vehicles, tents, and makeshift shelters used as homes. And it's the counter's decision about whom to classify as homeless. So if your car gets into a heated debate about whether someone's homeless or not, it's the counter's decision on whom to classify. And you're responsible for tallying the information on the tally sheet. That's for the counters. Now, walking census tracts. We have driving census tracts, and then we have walking census tracts. And these are tracts that are smaller, that it's better to walk to thoroughly count them. And they're kind of similar with driving teams, but let's take a look at some of the differences. Here you have 4 people per team with a minimum of 2, but instead of drivers and navigators, you have 4 counters and also 1 tally sheet. For walking teams, you want to coordinate with your team how you will get to and from your census tract area. So you're going to be at your deployment site. It may be a little bit further to walk. So you're going to want to either carpool together, or you can take your own cars there. You just want to coordinate how you're going to get to and from your census tract area. Here's some information that applies to all teams. So whether you're in a driving team or whether you're in a walking team, this is going to be applicable for you. So you want to try to incorporate a mix of men and women per team. This is for a lot of various reasons. One of them being it may be intimidating if there's a group of 4 guys walking up to a homeless female. That can just be a little bit intimidating and daunting. So there's just a lot of reasons why we try to do that. The other thing is all teams will be provided maps, clipboards, pencils, flashlights, and all other supplies that you'll be needed. So don't worry about that. We'll have all the supplies for you. And if you come across private property, it is off limits, okay? So this includes school campuses and other areas. So if you come across private property, just walk past it. Maps. Let's talk about maps. Each team will be given a map for their night, and it's going to look like this. Here is a census tract map. And it's, you can see here you have different legends here on the left. It indicates different areas such as cemeteries or amusement parks if that's in your area, or railroads. And what you're going to do is you're going to look on the inside of this map. So let's take a closer look in here. Here is your census tract, and you want to count everything on the inside of the red borders. So you count inside of there. So what happens if, say, let's take a look at Hillrose Street. That's at the very top border. So this Hillrose Street acts as a border for your census tract. Now, every street has 2 sides to it. So which sides do you count? For if it's a bordering street, you want to count the inside of the street. But let's take a look at Sumatros Street. Sumatros runs right through the middle of your census tract that you can see there. For that one, you're counting both sides of the street there because that falls on the inside of your area. So you want to make sure to count on the inside of the red borders. Don't forget alleys, such as this one. So if you see that there's alleys, you want to make sure that you count and cover that area as well. You want to cover parks. make sure that you thoroughly cover them, and shopping centers as well. Don't forget to count behind the shopping center or different churches or things like that where people you may find homeless people. This is extremely important. You want to report areas you are not able to reach. If you feel like it's unsafe or because of geographically, maybe there's like a really slopey hill, you want to report those areas. It's okay if you can't reach them, but we need to know those areas that you're not able to reach so that we can send a special team to go cover those areas. So report those areas. And throughout the time, you want to be thinking, where would I sleep if I was homeless? Where would I find a place to sleep? So you want to be thinking about that so that we can thoroughly count our areas. All right, let's talk about how to count. We're going to look at how to identify homeless. We're going to look at tents and makeshift shelters. We're going to look at the tally sheet, and we're going to talk about counting safely. Some of this information may be familiar to you, but we're just going to go over it for thoroughness. How to identify people who are homeless. The goal tonight is to safely and accurately record how many people are experiencing homelessness in our area. So use your best judgment, and we're going to use the ABCs, which stand for appearance, behavior, and condition. Why don't you say that to yourself? Appearance, behavior, and condition. Let's look at appearance and behavior of individuals, some common things for those that are experiencing homelessness. Some of them may be poor physical condition or hygiene. Others is weathered skin. It could be lots of belongings with bags or backpacks that they've accumulated. Wearing many layers of clothing or blankets. It may be cold out there. And pushing a cart, that's very common as well. And sleeping or lying down on the ground or bench, either in a sleeping bag. Let's look at conditions, specifically conditions for vehicles. Vehicles in disrepair that are parked by similar vehicles. Fogged up windows, so there's activity inside. Blankets on the windows, so they're blocking out so that you can't see inside. Cars that are packed with belongings. Parking tickets or street flyers have been accumulated on the window because it's been there for a while. Or the lights are on the inside. So with both of these, within the ABCs, whether it's individuals or cars, what you want to do is you want to look through a lot of similar things. A lot of individuals or cars are going to have a lot of these traits. Just one of these things doesn't necessarily indicate that someone's living in a vehicle or a car. I've gotten a parking ticket once or twice myself. So it doesn't necessarily indicate that a car is being used to live in. But you want to look at a common number of those things to come to a good conclusion on whether an individual or a car falls into this category. So let's take a look. So what are the signs that this car is being used as a home? We see here that you can see a lot of their belongings. You can see through the window that they've used it to store a lot of things. Their belongings are also on the outside of the car, so they're using the surrounding areas for their belongings. And yeah, it's accumulated different flyers, and there may be a ticket there on the window as well. So these are some of those common signs. But it's a common number of factors that we can conclude that this car is being used as a home. What are the signs that these RVs? Let's take a look at these RVs are being used as homes. So some of them are obvious. So let's take a look at this top one. It's being actively used. You can see here in this top one as well as the bottom. It's not in a driveway. It's not parked away. It's not next to a house. The bottom one is the vehicles have accumulated. It's very rare to find streets that you can use for overnight parking, and so RVs and different vehicles will find those streets and they'll congregate there. So those are some signs there. You can see that there's belongings around both. But if you look at this bottom one, it can be a little bit harder. You see that first RV? It looks a lot newer than that last one. And so you may not think that someone is using this as a home, but we look at those other indicators as well. Some other signs are if you see an electrical wire that's being used to connect to a power source, or if there's a generator that's outside. That was the case with that new one, that white one at the bottom. There's a generator on the other side that they were using. So those are a lot of signs that they're being used. So you want to use a lot of those different factors to draw your conclusions on whether it's being used as a home. Let's talk about makeshift shelters. A makeshift shelter is any collection of items, whether that be a bedroll, blankets, shopping carts, boxes, dumpsters, etc., that are compiled, constructed, and used as a home by a homeless person at an outdoor location. So let's take a look at some of these examples. Right here in this first example, you have an accumulation of shopping carts that have belongings with them they're using a fence here with some tarps that are draped over them. And it can be hard to distinguish. How do you distinguish between, is this one makeshift shelter? Is this two? How many people are using it? And the key indicators here are you want to look for areas that are used for sleeping. So whether that be a tent underneath that tarp or whether there be cardboard. And the number of areas to sleep, that's how many makeshift shelters that you're going to count. So for this one that we saw, there were two. So under the gray tarp and the blue tarp, there were two sleeping areas that we found. So we'd mark on our tally sheets 2 makeshift shelters for this one. Here's one that's being used here for propped up against a fence, and it's also being used with a tent as well. So you can see here that it's one sleeping area. So because the tent is the most prominent, on the tally sheet you're going to mark a tent right there and not makeshift shelter. So you want to look at which one is the primary one, and again, the key indicators here are sleeping areas. That would be one tent for this one. Here we have another one. This is a common scene. So you have a lot of belongings that are surrounding this area. You have, they've got stuff next to the dumpster. You've got a lot of shopping carts with a lot of their belongings, and then a tarp that is draped over some stuff. So here, for this one, this would be one makeshift shelter. It's taking up a large area, but again, we're looking for those sleeping areas to indicate them. So we see one area that can be used to sleep. So we're going to use one tally mark for this makeshift shelter. So unless from a respectful distance, remember this is just a visual count, you're not engaging with anyone, you're not disturbing anyone. So unless from a respectful distance, you can see how many people there are in the makeshift shelter, only count and tally the makeshift shelter itself. So if you see an individual in front of any one of these scenes and you can see that they're the only one there, you are going to mark the individual and not the makeshift shelter. Okay, that's an important distinction. It's more important to mark the individual than the makeshift shelter because that will lead to a better accurate count. Let's take a look. How many tents would you count in this picture? Why don't you take a look under this underpass. How many tents would you see? Take a second to look. The correct answer is 7. There are 7 tents. And there are clear borders between each of these 7 tents. And again, you see that there's 7, because those are 7 sleeping areas. They may have various belongings. Some may have more than others, but we see 7 distinct tents. We've talked a lot about the tally sheets. Let's explain them a little bit more in detail. Here is your 2016 street count tally sheet. This is what it looks like. Let's take a closer look at what's on them. So up on the very top left, you have your SPA number. Then you have, going across, you have your census tract number. A split code means when a census tract is so big that it gets split up into 2 areas. And so you have a split code. Your deployment site location will be on there, and then each deployment site location has a code. That's for our tracking references. You'll have your deployment site coordinator's name on there and their phone number in case you need to call them. And then right here is where you'll begin to fill in. You're going to fill in your team leader and their phone number, and each of the different team members and their phone numbers as well. Remember, to try to print as clearly as possible. So whoever's writing, you want to use whoever has the best handwriting, so we can be able to contact you in case anything comes up or if we have any questions about the tally sheet. And then the date you are going to fill in there, and then your departure time that you leave, and then also your return time. Remember, because you're going to be returning back to the deployment site when you're done counting. And then we come down here to our first section, which is our individuals. So these are individuals. So we have that top box is for adults over the age of 18. And just from experience, this first box is individuals, adults over 18. This is the box that you're probably going to be filling out the most. So that's going to be the one that will probably have the most tally marks. There are some exceptions, obviously, but that's normally what happens. And then you have under there your unaccompanied youth males that are under the age of 18, unaccompanied females under 18, and then unaccompanied youth where you're not necessarily sure what their gender are, so the gender is unknown. Why do we ask for male and female youth? That helps us with our youth count, and so that information is really important to us for youth specifically. So that's your first section. And for each one, you're going to mark one hash mark, one tally mark. Your second one is for families. So specifically, if you see families here, you're going to mark, so for family number 1, you're going to mark the number of adults in that first box, and then the accompanied youth that are under the age of 18. So whether that's male or female or the gender is unknown, you'll mark those appropriate boxes to the right. And then for families 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so on, you'll do the same. So that's for that. This box is specifically for families. And then this last section here is for vehicles, tents, and makeshift shelters. So that's what we were talking about earlier. So the number of cars that you see that are being used as homes, you're going to mark that. The number of vans, you're going to mark for that second box. And then for campers and RVs is the third. And then tents and makeshift shelters are that fourth and fifth box. And that makes up your tally sheet. So if you see a tally, you want to make these tally or hash marks. So if you see 2, you make 2 lines. And then if you see 4, you make 4 lines. And then when you get to the 5th, you want to make a diagonal one right there so that we can count a little bit easier. That helps us visually. So some tips here. You want to mark clearly. And then here's the 0 is a valid number. I know that you guys are all hyped up to count. You came out here to volunteer. You're going to make a difference in your community, and we're really excited about it. And so then you go out to your census tract, and you don't find anyone. That's okay. That's actually good. That's great. Your area don't have a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness. We want to know that. The goal, remember, the goal of the homeless count is accuracy. And so 0 is a valid number. So don't be discouraged about that at all. That's actually a great thing. Return tally sheets to the tally sheet validator at your deployment site. So when you return back and your tally sheet's all done, the tally sheet validator will make themselves known. And if you're not sure who that is, just ask your deployment site coordinator. Here's a fun fact. All those tally sheets that are marked, those marks from each one of those tally sheets, those all get added up and those get compiled, and we gather all those together, and those get sent to the U.S. Congress. These are the official numbers that are used for the federal government with the numbers for those that are experiencing homelessness. You guys are counting those official numbers, which is pretty cool. But not just on a national level, this information helps your local community. So we are going to compile all this information, and we're going to have all these pie charts and graphs and reports that you can use and that local policymakers, local neighborhoods, and local coalitions can use to help those that are experiencing homelessness. Because remember, these are not numbers, these are actual individuals, and we get to help our local communities, which is really, really great. So which would you count? I'm going to give you a couple questions here and see if you can get the right answer. We've gone over a lot of things, so let's see if you're paying attention. So say you come across this first scene. You have an individual here, and he is inside a tent. Which would you count on your tally mark? Would you make a mark in the individual section, or would you make a mark in the tent section? Or would you mark both? The correct answer is you're going to count just the individual. You're not going to count the tent. Remember, the individual, a visible site of an individual will be a priority over the tent because we can see that there's just one individual in there, so that makes it more accurate. Let's look at the second scenario. This is all in one neighborhood. So you came across 2 different RVs. This first RV in the top is tucked away. It's next to a house. You can see it hasn't been used in a while. And the second one is on the side of the street. It's not near a house. It looks like it's being actively used. The door's open. There's belongings on the side. And so which would you count? Would you count the first RV or the second RV, or would you count both RVs? The correct answer is RV number 2. You just RV number 2. So it will be just one hash mark if you see just that one RV in there. And so give yourselves a pat on the back if you got those answers right. And just go ahead and give yourselves a pat on the back even if you didn't. You did it for trying. So we're learning here. That's the whole point of this. All right, so we've gone over how to identify homeless. We've talked about tents and makeshift shelters and how to identify them. We've talked about the tally sheet. And now we're going to just talk about counting safely. We're going to invite a local law enforcement official here who's going to talk about just some key tips with counting safely. So we're going to give some time for them to do that. We also have some quick tips of our own. We want to remember to not disturb anyone, so you're not going to go knocking on tents or makeshift shelters to see if anyone's in there. You're not going to be going up to different RVs. Remember, you're just doing a visual count. You're not going to disturb anyone. You're not going to ask anyone, are you homeless? You're just doing a visible count. Flashlights are for tally sheets. This is important here. They are not for this, and they are not to be used for this either, okay? Flashlights are so that you can see your tally sheets to mark them clearly. And if you feel unsafe, stop. If there's a sketchy alley maybe that you don't feel safe walking down, that's okay. Just remember to report those areas that you haven't covered so that we can go back with a special team to do that. We're going to equip you with some safety numbers. The first one, if you see an emergency, 911, dial 911. Just go straight to that if you see an emergency happening. We're going to give you referral cards or 211 cards, and these are for if you do come across homeless individuals or families that want more information. These cards have all the information, information for them to direct them to. Some areas will have more specific service provider information for them depending on the area that you're in. You'll have the deployment site coordinator number on the top of your tally sheet, so you can call them maybe if you have any questions or if you feel unsafe about something and you want to bring anything to their attention, you can call them. You'll also be equipped with a local law enforcement contact. They are aware that you're out there counting, and so you can call them for more immediate things if you see a crime or something like that that you want to bring to their attention. Media, this is a big event, so there's a lot of volunteers. The homelessness is a big issue. It's come a lot in the media, so we expect them to be out. If you feel comfortable, feel free to share with them about your volunteer experience. Share why you chose to volunteer for the homeless count, maybe why it's important, why the information is important, some of the things maybe you learned in this training. You can share with them as well. And if you don't, you can direct the media to the deployment site coordinator for instructions about how to reach a loss of media spokesperson. All right, we're almost done here. Release indemnity and waiver of liability agreement. This is important. So we're going to hand these out, and so please take a moment to review them and sign. Now, please hand them in before you deploy the count. This is important. You must turn this in to volunteer. If we don't get a waiver form signed from you, then you cannot volunteer. If you are 17 or under, our volunteers that are 14 to 17 that are helping out at the deployment site, we're going to need your guardian or your parent to sign that for you before you can help us out here. Speaking of that, volunteers that are 17 and younger, you can see your deployment site coordinator for special instructions. You guys are going to be helping us out at our deployment site. Some of you have probably already been helping. Let's give them a big hand. Our younger volunteers. And if you have any questions about the release indemnity and waiver of liability agreement, you can talk to your deployment site coordinator. We'll take time for some questions and answers. And so if you're looking at this training before the count, you can contact your deployment site coordinator. Or if it's the night of the count, you can talk to your trainer specifically. They'll be equipped to answer any of your questions as well. And this concludes our 2016 Homeless Count Training Guide for deployment site coordinators and for the volunteer training. Thanks so much for joining us, and we really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and contact either your LASA regional coordinator, or if you're a trainer, you can contact your deployment site coordinator. Thanks so much, and we are looking forward to the count.